All right. What's up, everybody from Deep Dives in the Deserts, Crypto Corner with Jayse and John. So, Jayse, how you doing, my friend?
It's a pretty good start to the day so far, man. Alexis, my wife, she woke me up with the exciting news that the case had ended. I heard her running over and flew the door open. I was still, laying in bed with the covers over my head, and she's like, "The lawsuit's over. We won." So yeah.
What's been going on over the last couple of weeks, though? Anything interesting, or just hanging out?
So we did a California trip for a couple weeks, and my grandmother passed away a few months ago, so we got all our family together and did a memorial, and then we did some sightseeing around California. Went to the beach and did some other things. Joshua Tree. So yeah, that was my last couple of weeks. Kind of taking a little bit of a break from crypto and reconvening with nature and family. And now
isn't the beach amazing? When you go to the beach and you just like kind of enjoy like the water coming, receding, and it's peaceful.
Yeah, we went to Laguna Beach, which I've been through that town, but I'd never been to the actual beach. And the tide pools there were the most incredible tide pools that I've ever seen. Like the most amount of life in the tide pools. It felt like a movie. There was just hermit crabs and sea anemones and urchins and fish and stuff everywhere. So cool. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. Notice I only went to California once. I moved out to Vegas and so I never went out. I was never at the West. I was never in the West Coast until actually moved out to Vegas. But then when I went to California with Lisa, we went to all the different towns, and Laguna's actually was my favorite place. Nice. Every time we go, we went there, and we went to Newport. Newport's really nice, and we went. I think we did a whale watching thing there. We going out on the boat, but nice. Of all of it, Laguna was my favorite because it was there was that restaurant you can eat right over the beach. I can look out onto the beach, and just the way the little town is set up there. Where people are walking around in the little restaurants. I love all that stuff. Remind me of Greenwich Village in the city. In the Village or Soho, that's what it reminds me of. It has that little quaint, kind of feel. So, yeah, that's my favorite. But over the last 2 weeks, here is really been, Lisa's been doing her. She's been taking sessions and having really positive results with it, and that's really we've been really she's been concentrating on that because she's doing sessions now with the, intuitively, psychically, and then she's also doing meditations where she's helping people meditate. And so she's getting really like a large amount of stuff coming in, like people are, it's starting to gain some momentum. So I was trying to help. And of course, Tyler called me a secretary because I was like, he told me I was secretary. And so I was like, hey, sometimes you got to play the backup role, right? You got to be a good backup too. So, especially when you get married, you got to do.
Congratulations to Lisa for that successful launch and the success with the new site and the services and everything.
Yeah. So, and she's excited because she loves help. She's helping people and she loves doing that type of stuff. So she's having a good time and she's getting really good reviews. So yeah, so we've been kind of on that. And then, and what was exciting too is my little one, my 15-year-old, she's actually goes to an academy out here. And so her school is, baby, we're talking about you. And I told you we don't do this, right? But anyway, we go, she gets mad when I do that. But she's 15 and she went to Reno the first time going away by herself. And, but she was with her school. She goes to Northwest Technical Career Academy. So it's an academy that you have to be chosen to get in, like a lottery, and like they have specials. And she wants to be a teacher. So look at see what you did. I told her we don't do that. See what you did. She put up.
What do you mean you don't do that?
Yeah, I told her. I said, if you want to say you're going to pray, it's one thing, but don't go thank you. I said you don't have to do that. And so I do that now. I bother her. So now she did 100. Look, she did like several of them to bother me.
Yeah.
But so Gianna goes there, and she's a freshman, and she went to her and her partner. They did this thing on bullying, and they had to present it to judges, and she's only a freshman, and they did so good that they were only 2 points away from making it to go to a national competition. And
Wow.
they actually got the gold. So there's gold, silver, bronze, and if you get gold and silver, you get invited back to go again, and you can go into a state competition. But they just missed national, and you know, when you're young, look, everyone.
I see.
She's everyone does it, but I told her we don't do that. But but with so anyway, she being that young, going up and doing that, we were really proud of her. Because that, to me, it's it takes a lot of guts to get up in front of people and do that, and present your, So
Yeah.
between her and my wife, it seems the girls in the family have been keeping us going with good news. So I'm very happy.
Awesome. Well, congrats to you as a happy dad, and congrats to her. That's sweet.
Yeah, it's awesome, especially when we see you see kids doing good. It's amazing. Anyway, to get into our show. So this morning also, not only was I happy to see, because Lisa, I was at the doctor's appointment, and Lisa had forwarded me what Alexis had posted. So your wife actually alerted both of us that happened.
She was up early, so she saw it first.
Yeah. So, but that's awesome. And we were talking about that. If you remember, like the last show, we were talking about. We were saying, hey, what's going to happen? They're dropping these cases. They haven't dropped XRP, and like they're going to save the best for last, right? They're going to drop it. And they did. So it's that was pretty cool when I saw that. I was like, look at this. He like we were talking about it. What you were saying, how they. I was like, hey, hit the nail on the head. So that was cool. But also, I don't know if you saw this morning. It was on Newsbreak too. They said that XRP it soared 10%. So, but it went up just on the news of the appeal. It looks like it went up a little bit.
Yeah, right now we're up just about 11%. It's looks like it's $2.48 right now.
So so that's just on news. And so does that change anything fundamentally with XRP as far as like fundamentals or technicals on it? No, it doesn't change that. But what we're talking about is when you see things like that, that's so people went in and bought that on emotion, right? Because nothing fundamentally changed with it, but on emotion, that's what happened. So when that's how the stock market runs too a lot, is on that emotion. If they hear something or see something, people will move in and buy. So the good thing about it is, the fundamentals aren't changing, which means that we still have very high outlooks, very good technicals, very good fundamentals for XRP. So nothing there changed. So we still feel the same way about it. But now we have this roadblock out of the way, which was kind of mucking up the emotion about it, right? The people's emotion, thinking, what if they can do this too? What if that does bring it down? So then people start to either sell or they get stagnant. And so the good thing is, just on that, you're looking at a 10% gain. And again, all those fundamentals are still strong. So how do you kind of look at that if you're looking at XRP as somebody who, like, it really well, but let's say you were looking at it and when you see something like that happen, how would you kind of put yourself in someone who's watching us, not you who's an expert at it, right? But someone who would watch it. How would you kind of view it? That, okay, it went up and you know what I mean? How would you gauge it?
So I think, the market, as generally likes to front run the news cycle, right? So the market's constantly trying to figure out what's going to happen next and getting ahead of that narrative, right? By what do they say? Buy the rumor, sell the news, right? Mm-hmm. So this was the news. And you could say the rumor was when Trump won the election and we got that crazy pump from 50 cents to nearly $3 or just over $3, I think it went. So now we're, even with this news today, we're sitting at 250, which is below the previous, high of a couple of weeks ago. And maybe new people are like, well, hey, why isn't it, going to the moon right now? Like, shouldn't that have been the moment that declared, it's going to start going up? And I think it's important to keep in mind that pump that we saw previously was basically what we what we're getting prematurely for the news right now. So I was just pulling up this clip from Brad Garlinghouse here. He went on, I forget what show it is today, but he's doing a couple different shows, and he said that they consider themselves to be in the driver's seat right now with how they're proceeding. So at the moment Trump won, everyone knew, okay, this is going to get dropped. That's why it pumped so much. That was the buy the rumor moment. This is the sell the news moment, but it's not being sold. It's still pumping, but it's not like doing crazy moves right now. So what I would expect is now we've got the confirmation of the rumor. We're sitting in a good spot. Things are looking even more generally up and bullish than they were even just a couple of weeks ago, because like you said, we got the confirmation for sure that we're moving on to this next stage. And now they're in the perfect position to do what they want to do next, which is expand into, national and international finance with XRP as a technology to transmute and upgrade the financial system. So I'm super excited for it. I think we'll probably see new all-time highs, which is about $4 within the next few weeks to months, if I had to guess. There's always still this possibility of a financial crisis, a liquidity crisis, a black swan event. We've talked about the possibility of that happening, but also the possibility of kind of circumnavigating that scenario and maybe having a smoother path. But in either case, whatever happens, we're now, in my vision, completely positioned for the best case scenario, no matter what happens. So if there is a black swan event and there's a liquidity crisis and the markets crash, XRP is going to be the one that is positioned, not only because of its technology and because of what we just had with the case, but it's still also the only crypto in the United States with full legal clarity from a judge. So even though we've had, Trump come out and say, be in support of Bitcoin and all these other coins and be very pro crypto and, withdraw a lot of these lawsuits, XRP is still the only one that has a written order from a judge as being not a security on full clarity. So maybe that doesn't matter as much as it used to the Biden admin, but it still puts XRP, I think, a leg above the rest. And I think there's a reason that Trump listed it first amongst all those other cryptos when he made those tweets or those posts a couple weeks back. So that's kind of how I'm analyzing it right now.
So that's a good way to break down the ripple effect, pun intended. Because this really is, it's like a legal, it's a milestone legally for what just happened. Like you said, it's the only one that truly was saying it's not a security. So when the outlook for, the family that we look to kind of invest in, right, is the XRP, XLM, Sologenic, the ones that we talk about all the time. So if you explore now the kind of the risk of investing in crypto compared to, say, last year to this year, you would, how I would categorize it would be, we have higher reward potential and less risk factor. How do you look at that? I mean, on a whole.
Yeah, I'd agree. And, we, ever since Trump won, I think that that's been the new norm of having a lower risk, higher reward. But then this kind of is cementing that reality for us and being certain that, we're not going to be drugged through another lawsuit. So, yeah, I think of any time in crypto, this is relatively the least risk, the highest reward, and probably the best time to get into crypto if you hadn't gotten in, a couple months ago when prices were really low.
Yeah, and it's you can see just how, everything is looking as far as if you're looking at, say, the crypto, kind of on a whole, the whole crypto market. With this happening at XRP, are we seeing? You think we see the cryptos on a whole kind of moving up? Like, so when when Bitcoin does good, how everything kind of moves. Is this having a similar effect, maybe even just on a smaller scale, because it's not as big as Bitcoin yet? But do we see that, or is it you think we'll just see it more in like the family of the XRP, the Ripple XRP platform?
Well, today everything is in the green, except for the Binance coin, which is funny. But other than the Binance coin, everything else is up 2, 3, 5%. So Bitcoin right now is up 3%. Ethereum's up more than even Bitcoin at 7.6, and then XRP's up, of course, even more than that at nearly 12% right now. So I don't know if that was specifically from XRP. It's very possible. It might have been today might have been a naturally green day already, but this, boosted it even more.
Yeah.
But I think what we're seeing, I'm looking at the charts right now, is the decoupling of what they call the altcoins, which would be anything but Bitcoin, the alternative coins, decoupling from Bitcoin. And, that traditionally happens when we're about to go into what they call alt season, alternative coin season, which is when the Bitcoin dominance starts to fall and fade, and the dominance of the other cryptocurrencies become more prominent. And that's because, in the traditional speculative market, outside of utility, people are taking profits from their Bitcoin. They're purchasing, other cryptos with it. And so Bitcoin will start to kind of round its peak. And then that's when these other cryptos start to come up. But ultimately, I think what we're going to see in probably the next year or so is a complete decoupling on a utility driven level of these assets where, I think XRP is on its way to flipping Ethereum, for instance, which right now it's less than a 2x away. So if XRP were to double in price, it would become the number 2 crypto asset, which it used to be in 2018, number 2 before the whole Ethereum gate scandal and corruption was going on, where they were, kind of prelude to the SEC lawsuit. Before they brought that weapon out, they had already started to strip, XRP's prominence and kind of prop up Ethereum and give them regulatory passes and simultaneously go after XRP and others. So yeah, I think in the next year, we're going to see this decoupling, and then that's when it's going to get really exciting, because that's when, things are really just, who knows what's going to happen. It's a whole new world at that point in terms of these assets. And we could see XRP even overtaking Bitcoin in the next few years or sooner.
With that would be incredible. And, one of the things I saw, I thought it was funny, because, they put an acronym to everything. And I said, we have a decrease in FUD, right? FUD.
Yep.
With the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is that turns into a very big deal, because that's a lot of what holds people back or triggers people to, pull the trigger and start to buy. And if enough people do it and create that forward momentum, that buying pressure, this gives it another kind of wind behind its sails to keep moving up. So now, with the, we always talk through the family of cryptos that we talk about. Do you see what, because the say Stronghold and Corium and Sologenic, right, and even the meme coin that's come out, are you seeing any behind them? Do you see any kind of momentum building behind them, moving? XLM and them. Do you see the same, or it's like most of it's XRP, or what are you seeing with that?
So, and I'm looking at the portfolio right now, and synchronistically, the Trump coin is at 11.11 right now, which is funny. $11.11, just fun little addition there. But yeah, so basically, when just like with Bitcoin kind of leading the rest of the market, with XRP and its ecosystem, it leads its own ecosystem. And so a lot of these coins that are smaller, whether they be utility coins like Solo, Corium, Stronghold, XLM, or even meme coins, on the XRP ledger, they move more volatile. The smaller projects move more volatile because, the same amount of money creates more movement with a smaller market cap. So right now, in our portfolio, or at least in my portfolio, the biggest gainer today is Sologenic at 24% currently. And that's what I've kind of seen in the past, is when XRP goes up, either at the same time or shortly after, Sologenic and Corium will also go up. Usually it's Sologenic first and then Corium. So Corium is up about, actually a little more than XRP, but about the same as XRP. It's about 12%. And then Solo is up that 24%. So yeah, those would be the biggest gainers within the XRP ecosystem today.
Nice. And let me ask you, is there any chance that some of the other ones besides Corium come up with a passive model that would be like attractive, or is like Corium the one that they have, and that's the one that's like the one for the family?
So Corium and Flare, at least in our portfolio, are the two that are focused on passive income. So Flare's actually a lot bigger than Corium, but Flare is also not limited to just the XRP ecosystem. It was birthed out of XRP, so that's kind of its home turf in a way. But
Yeah.
it's basically now trying to work with basically any major blockchain that's not DeFi enabled. So that's one of the big things Flare is doing, is bringing DeFi, decentralized finance, to XRP, Bitcoin, and other projects that don't have it. So that's a big one. I think Flare is going to be pretty popular. And then Stronghold, which is, on the smaller side right now next to Corium. At the moment, Stronghold doesn't have any staking or passive income, but that is something they've been flirting with and teasing, basically coming into the ecosystem probably in the next few months to a year. So that's kind of what I'm looking at next is Stronghold, especially since that's one of my top holdings in my portfolio. And outside of that, XLM, Stronghold is built on Stellar XLM. So that's another one that probably will be getting more DeFi passive income compatibility. Outside of that, those are the main ones that I'm looking at right now for the XRP and XLM ecosystem. What's up, Emma?
How you doing, Emma? She's a first-time watcher to the show. Well, we appreciate you coming on. So, all right. So, I was so you do think that XRP at one point in market cap with a bull run can flip Ethereum? So, and I agree there. But now there's also talks about, especially with the lawsuit that just with the appeal from the appeal of with the SEC, that Ripple should launch its IPO in 2025, or do you think they should just stay private?
I don't know if I even have an opinion on what they should do, but I think that they will go public. I think it's probably inevitable that they're going to go public. And then the big question most people have is, well, what's going to be the better earner, XRP or Ripple shares? And my personal opinion would be that XRP is still the main, holy grail or trophy opportunity. But that's not to say that Ripple won't be a good opportunity. And maybe, depending on how the cards get played and how individuals play their own cards, maybe people will be able to flip some of their XRP into Ripple, make a quick, 2x or more, and then put it back into XRP. I would probably expect at least a good number of people to attempt that, to try to raise their XRP bags. But for me personally, at this moment, I'm not feeling super called to investing in Ripple. Maybe I'd put a little bit into it, but I'm still feeling like XRP is the big focus in terms of, technology-driven, price increases.
So yeah, well, and that was the next thing I wanted to ask, because of how we view XRP, right, as that it's like more of a value. Real value is going to come from being a long-term store of value, right? Because where we think it's going to go, or do you think it would be more value as that cross-border payment tool? And I was reading an article on this guy talking about it, and I was kind of I didn't know if you saw something like that, because I read some off. I wanted to just read what some of like the alternative guys were saying. They have these weird names in these chats, and so when they brought this up, and so I was kind of thinking, I don't know how you would even compare the two, but for me, I think it has to become that cross-border payment tool to get that to really bring the value, to have a long-term store value. because
Yeah,
that's what's really going to bring the right. That's going to bring the performance if it's going to become the new function of the banks.
yeah. I feel like the store of value is kind of the secondary utility, and it comes naturally with anything that ends up having a more stable price and robust, liquidity behind it. So that's where, like, with Bitcoin, it's touted as being the store of value like gold, but outside of that, it doesn't have advantages over other projects like XRP. And anything that gets to be as big as Bitcoin, or even at the current size of XRP, it's already a store of value. So yeah, I agree. I think that the implementation into the payments infrastructure and what it's going to do for the global economy, and healing the trauma that's kind of been endured through the central banking system, and all the corruption that's gone on, I think that's going to be the main driver.
So, and then when it comes to, like with Sologenic and Quorum and the things that they can do kind of in conjunction on the Ripple platform, is it because of the XRP technology that they can work at faster speeds, or do they have their own technology? It's just that they're on the Ripple platform because they adopted them, because they have, you say, a good feeling about them, or they think they're a good technology? Or is it the XRP technology that gives them the speed at which they can do their transfers as well?
Yeah, it's XRP at the core of the Ripple platform. So, theoretically, Ripple doesn't need XRP and XRP doesn't need Ripple, but XRP is aside from them having co-creators in common and, being the same founding group, XRP is the the best technology to do the job. So Ripple basically has like a suite of payment services. And then XRP is at the core of many of not all, but many of those payment services that fuels and expedites the speed and efficiency of the various Ripple services that they have.
So, okay, so now, and going from there, so when you talk about layer 1, layer 2 blockchain, when you go now, Quorum is its own layer 1 blockchain, and I don't know why I thought it was layer 2, but it's not built on XRP.
So it is technically its own layer 1. So Sologenic is the layer 2 on XRP, and they're the same team, the same founders behind Sologenic and Quorum, same exact people. So they created Sologenic first, and that is the #1 layer 2 on the XRP ledger. And I think it has been for like 5 years now. So #1 token behind XRP itself on the XRP blockchain. And that's, of course, focused on tokenizing and, tokenizing stuff on XRP specifically. But then they made Quorum, which is its own layer 1 blockchain, but it acts as a bridge between XRP and another ecosystem called the Cosmos ecosystem, which is known as the Internet of Blockchains. So yeah, Quorum, technically it's its own unique layer 1, but it's essentially interoperable. It speaks the language of XRP, so it can work with it.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that when I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then, and I was wondering because it was in my head with the 7,000 transactions per second, and that's what Quorum's heist. That's Quorum's speed.
Yeah. So technically, on paper, right now, Quorum is even faster than XRP. And so you might say, well, why do you need XRP if you've got Quorum? And the reason I would give is that, in the past, we've talked about the example of the Ferrari. And if you want to take that Ferrari off road, you could put all-wheel drive tires on it, or off-road tires, and it might work, but it's not going to be as great at being a Ferrari and being a race car. Versus if you were to get like a Jeep and take that off-road, it's not going to be as good at off-roading as that. But sometimes you need that crossover. So with Quorum, it's got all the DeFi capabilities built in, which you could call like the off-roading feature in that example. But it doesn't have you could argue that XRP's consensus mechanism is more robust and made for payments specifically. So Corium uses a proof of stake model, which is similar to what a lot of other blockchains use. It has its upsides, it has its downsides, but XRP, on the other hand, uses its own unique consensus mechanism that they call the Federated Byzantine Agreement, or FBA. And it's basically engineered and designed to be as foolproof as possible. And that's part of the reason that they haven't brought in the DeFi and smart contracts, because it could limit the robustness of its security and its speed and efficiency for being a cross-border payment mechanism. But that could change in the future too. So right now on paper, Corium is technically faster at 7,000 TPS versus XRP at 1,500. But technically, XRP has the computing power to be scaled up to, I want to say I heard like 35,000 transactions per second. So it's like, right, from what I understand from what David Schwartz has said, they don't need to scale it past 1,500 right now, but they could if they wanted to. But they're reserving that power for other things, like that computing power. So when it needs to be, it can be increased essentially.
So let me ask you, with that type of power that Corium does have, do you think that that can be the second one in the family that flips Ethereum?
It could be. I would love that. That would be
that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be incredible. And I will say, like, behind XRP, I think I get the most synchronicities around Corium, as far as like just seeing the word core, in my daily life, and like, listening to the universe in terms of those patterns and synchronicities. The Corium synchronicities for my group as well in the Conscious Crypto Academy, we're always posting pictures of, core on the sides of trucks, or the logo being in random things that are unrelated. So maybe that's the universe telling us that, yeah, it's going to be, one of the big ones.
Yeah. And so really quick, I wanted to do it in the beginning, but Jayse has the Conscious Crypto Academy. That's what he's referring to. He has a lot of students, me being one of them. And so, gold hit 3,000 an ounce too. So,
awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's been up. It was at in the 29s for a while, 2900s, and then it hit 3,000. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate that. It's I can't get over. I mean, just last November it was in 1620, 1650, and it moved. But it just goes to show that I think that there's just more, as there's more exposure to the crypto market, as there's more exposure to some of the manipulation, or a lot of the manipulation in the physical markets like gold and silver, but also in the manipulation in the stock market. I just think that I think that, and then the more this gets exposed, and really now with Trump talking about it and having so much of the country behind him, I think people are finally they're going to come around, and they're going to be like, let me give it a real look, let me give it a real shot, because it's not just this kind of phantom in the corner anymore. It's not, because that's how I know the reason I feel like that too is because that's how I looked at it. Like I said, and I was in the investment kind of world, the traditional one, my whole career. And so that's how I looked at it, where it was kind of like this thing where maybe you throw a few bucks here and see if you luck out and you hit it good, then you get in and get out, because who knows, but it's like, it couldn't be any further from the truth. And now that I think that you have a president that's saying we want to make America the capital, right? We want to get our strategic reserves of crypto. They have their own coins. Now that literally the president of the United States has his own meme coin, and the first lady, her own meme coin. So when you start to see that, it normalizes, and that's where I think you start to see massive momentum. Because when some of the whales invest, that's great, right? Because you got a big hit, boom. But when you get the 95% of most of us, where we were all kind of in that middle, start to move as a wave, that's a tidal wave that can really push, and really get it. into like the mainstream. So, and I think that's where we're headed, which is why we're going to see, I think we're seeing physical gold and everything move up because the banks can't manipulate it as easy as like they were with the short contracts. And I think crypto is a lot of the same is happening now with the appeal dropping from the SEC. ETFs are coming out. There's some countries that are using XRP now. They're saying they can use it as some payments, right? So if you once you start to put it all, it's not like these just random events, but once you start to put them all in place, can you like see a pattern emerging of how it's starting to move?
Yeah, definitely. And I think more of the average person is going to be feeling safer to get into it because of the reasons partially that you're listing, the president having his own coin, the strategic reserve, ETFs being filed where people can, they'll have crypto in their mutual funds and in their portfolios potentially without even knowing it. And, so much of retail, especially people that have been in the stock market, and I guess especially people who have never invested, would see the volatility in something like XRP and other cryptos and see, 10, sometimes 20% up or down in a single day is scary for some people. And so there's been a lot of people who have just stayed out because, especially a year ago or even just 6 months ago, it was very uncertain about what was going to happen. And that risk was way higher. But now I think people are going to be feeling way safer. And I think, that, like we were saying, the risk return ratio is really tilting in the direction of reward, where more and more people are going to be joining. And then, of course, eventually the volatility will even out. But I think that we have a lot more room to go before, we actually get to a place where XRP is truly stable, which I think will probably happen eventually, or at least stability in a relative sense. I do think that because of the deflationary nature of it, it'll always have a slow increase of value. But I think we'll get to a point where it is eventually stable at a certain price, whether that be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. That's where I think it's ultimately going. And then, once it stabilizes there in terms of all the money in the global markets and derivatives and debt and everything else that it's going to be accounting for, pretty much everything in the world of value is going to be tokenized on the blockchain. And that's a big deal because it really is all the money. And that's what, people at Ripple and other people have said, is that they're going for all the money in terms of tokenizing everything on XRP. So yeah, a lot more room to move, but eventually it's going to become so safe that it's going to be the obvious investment, kind of like gold is, even though a lot of people are still not investing in gold, even though that's considered one of the, safest things. But eventually I think it'll be something that financial advisors are even recommending people put in their portfolios as a hedge against more risky things.
So I left this up because Lori had put this up. So I want to see what your thoughts were on this, but I also wanted to, so there's a couple of good ones. So I don't know if Emma, I don't know, the one right below is, she said deletes. I don't know if it means, if it's like a play on words, like delete. But so Lori's first question, do you gentlemen believe the crash of the US dollar will be revealed here in the States, because nobody out of America will take it as currency, not even Mexico or Canada? What are you thinking about the dollar, and do you think it gets backed by gold and Trump keeps it? Or do you think Trump lets it get taken? Because Trump did come out and say that the dollar wasn't going to go nowhere, but he didn't say the dollar wouldn't change, it wouldn't be backed by gold or even crypto. Who knows? But what do you think? What if you had to speculate out?
I think most likely the US dollar will survive. It may go through a turbulent time as things are settling, but I think ultimately it will be gold backed again, whether that is the current note that we have that they gold back, or I think more likely, like you and I have talked about, and I know other people have talked about, the actual gold notes that are rumored to be already out there and not yet in circulation, but essentially ready to go. And that resonates with me, that we'll go to a gold standard. Crypto will be a intimate part of that. Like maybe it'll be a part of the backing of it as well. But at this point, I don't see the US dollar going away completely. Maybe the Fed dollar, maybe the all-seeing eye, current greenback that we have. But I think the US currency will survive, and it will adapt and probably become the new global standard again.
Yeah. And with that, just to get a couple of stats. So Lori, and anyone else that's interested with the dollar. So a couple of things is why this is all happening is, one, right, we have this massive debt load. That's number one. So the debt, we have what, 34 trillion, and the interest payments. Our interest payment is more than our military budget, which usually they say that's the precursor to collapse, right? So that's one thing, and it hurts the confidence in the dollar. Then you have the BRICS nations, which are doing the de-dollarization. So outside the U.S., like Lori had mentioned, but especially the BRICS nations, they're developing alternative systems, and really a lot of it was because of, when the dollar is so much stronger than a lot of the currencies that are out there, right? There's some currencies that you need, 10 million whatever is equal $1, right? It gets crazy. So what happens is, if the dollar was so much, say, stronger than the Russian ruble, right? So when we need to do something, and we're able to use that and put a sanction on. So ultimately, and I think what even Putin said in an interview, that that every time what the U.S. does is we use the dollar, the strength of the dollar, as a cudgel, right? And we bang someone over the head with it because we're dominant. The dollar's dominant, and when we keep doing that, and he said, which he was saying he thought was a mistake, because of times like this, when you do that to people too many times, right? And you use what you had, that power over them, too many times, they get to a point where their back's against the wall. And now that's when they started to talk about the CBDCs, right? And then the BRICS wanted to do their own CBDC. And then when they took Russia off the SWIFT system to kind of try to hurt them financially, what they all of a sudden, they went to a gold back, or they were using, the ruble to buy gas instead of turning it into the US dollar to go buy oil, right? So they started to do those things, right? Then hyperinflation started to creep in, which is why we started to see, or the weakening of the dollar, right? Which is why we started to see gold moving up. But if you remember, when we started to see that inflation, gold didn't move right up because, Emma, you're 100% correct. It's with all of us, right? The average people, and whatever, the regular people, and then you have the deletes, right? And what you have is them really holding down the price of physical gold, even though the dollar was getting weaker and weaker. And so most people see it as, wow, look how gold went up in price. But that's really what it is that's how weak the dollar is. It takes that much more dollars to buy gold. And so they always say that gold is a store of wealth. When I worked in physical gold, Jayse, I couldn't even, if I called it an investment over the phone, like if I said, you want to, your investment in gold, in physical gold, the compliance, because they listen to you, would call you immediately or break into the phone call to let you know that it's not an investment. Do not say that. It's a store of wealth. That's what it's been for millennia. And so what that means is that it's just you're storing your wealth. And so it's not that your store of wealth happens to increase in dollars. It's that whatever you're buying it with is decreasing in dollars or in strength. And so you need more of it to buy it. And so that's why they always say it's a hedge against inflation. Because of that. So either way you look at it, it's the same outcome. And even though it's kind of it's a small tweak in how you think about it, it's a small tweak on how I thought about it. I didn't realize that. I was calling it an investment 45 times a day until compliance almost had a breakdown. And they were just like, dude, stop calling it an investment.
So is that a legal thing, or is it more of a psychological thing for the
No, it was a compliance thing. It was
wow.
Yeah, no, it was compliant. Compliance was listening specifically for that. And I mean, and they didn't let it go. They would say, they would go, why are you saying it's an investment? It's never been an investment. It never will be. Like they tried to drill it into us, right? And they literally, to the point where they broke into phone calls you know, where they were listening and they would take the phone call over and explain to the person on the phone that, listen, there, it's not I mean, that's how, you know, kind of serious it was, because of the fact of, it's not like a crypto, right? You can say it's an investment in crypto because crypto is moving up in price, and there's different way why it's moving up. Where gold, because it's considered a store of wealth, and I didn't get too deep into it with compliance, because the first thing you want to do with compliance is not get in trouble and get off the line, right? And so
Yeah.
I was just like, that's what you need me to say, fine. But, and I had them explain it a little bit, but that was what it was. It's a store of wealth. Your store of wealth doesn't move up, and there's no way to value a store of wealth. It's just a store of wealth. But if the dollar is getting weaker, right, because of inflation, so now it's costing, that same 100,000 is not buying that same amount of gold. You need that 100,000 is buying far less of gold, which means the price is going up. So that's what's happening. So when you look at, so when you look at, so hyperinflation, and that's why it went to what Emma was saying, is because that it's true. What the elites were doing, or the big banks and those types, they were shorting gold, shorting silver. I mean, to the point where they were getting sued by you know, there was class action lawsuits. I think JP Morgan Chase paid out hundreds of millions of dollars. God knows how much money they made. But when those short contracts came due, dude, they didn't even, because when a short contract is going to expire, you got to replace that gold. So you're hoping it goes down, because if silver goes up and you're in a short, you're taking a massive loss, right? Because when you short something, you want it to go opposite. So when you buy or go long, you want it to go up. You short, you want it to go down. So what happens is, as they're holding it down, but what's happening, it's a little bit higher, or they're going to maybe break even. What they do is, instead of taking that loss, they just leased it to Bank of America, right? Then Bank of America leases those contracts, shorts a little more. Now they're way over what the CSEC, right, the Commodities, the Securities and Exchange Commission, says they're allowed to do, which is why they were able to get sued. And then they do the same thing, and then they lease it to Goldman Sachs, and then Goldman Sachs leases it to Wells Fargo, and they lease it back to, you know, JP Morgan. And it was just this, it was crazy. And there was a guy on, I can't remember his name now, he's a weird name, but he would come on and he would actually show, you can actually see it. There's a way to look it up and find it, where you can see them doing that, having 40,000 contracts, 100,000 contracts, which is way over what the regulation says that they're allowed to do. So when Emma, when you do say that is 100% true, and now that's a great way to devalue the dollar. And then you have the loss of the petrodollar status, and then the CBDCs coming along, causing you know, a lot of that FUD, right? That fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the dollar. Which allows the BRICS nations and some other countries that are smaller to start to do different things that they shouldn't, because the dollar should be the reserve currency of the world, right? So with all those things, Lori, when you're asking, so I'm in the same kind of school as Jayse with this. I can't see us, well, especially over the next 4 years, but even moving past that the dollar's fully gone. I think the fiat, as we know it now, I think that should die, probably, because that's a great way, because it's really worth nothing. When they put $100 on there, or $1, it's cost the same to do it. There's nothing that gives that $100 bill except 2 zeros. It gives it more value. You know what I mean? There's literally nothing behind it. You might as well write it on toilet paper. So, you know, I think that to get the gold, those treasury notes, right, with the little gold thing in there. And I have some, I'll tell you, I have a contact that sent me some stuff that has some banking contacts that says, I don't know if it's true. I didn't, this is coming from, you know, a different source. I'm just relaying what he said, that his guy in a bank said that they have slabs slabs of money that are waiting they just got to flip the switch to the quantum system or whatever system's coming, but they already have the money with the gold thing in it. That's going to be gold back. So I didn't see it yet. I haven't heard it from my banking friends, but we'll see. But if
I've heard that from some other sources too, that like that same thing, that certain people at banks within the know have seen both the new dollars, but also the new QFS system, if you want to call it that. Like I remember that was going around like a year, 2 years ago, maybe even 3, where a lot of these banking insiders were saying, hey, they're training us on the new system. Like we're already being prepped and trained on how to use this QFS system. And it's just a
Yep.
matter of time for this switch to flip and for it to happen. And
Yeah,
what's funny, while you were talking about that with the dollar, my best friend just texted me randomly. I don't know if he's watching this right now, but he texted me at 11:11, which is funny too. And he said, "By the way, I keep getting what I think are counterfeit bills for change. It seems like a lot of cash is fake. Are you noticing this?" And I haven't noticed that myself too much, but it wouldn't surprise me, and it would contribute to everything we're talking about right here.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we got money out of a bank, and we went to deposit cash into an ATM at a different bank, and it took some. Remember, it took some and wouldn't take like. And again, it could just be a system glitch. Who knows? But we put all the money we put in that we took out, we put right into another ATM. It took some of it, wouldn't take 3 or 4 bills, kept popping out. We couldn't do it that way. So, and the ATMs are really geared to, they spit out something if they think it's could be a funny bill. Now originally we got it in there too. We had to go to a different ATM, and finally it went in. But again, you don't know if that's one of the bigger banks that's going to do a switch and didn't do a switch. So now those ATMs are upgraded for the new system. I mean, who knows? But I've been noticing it more and more, and I do notice because of my years with banking and handling money, it feels different, and it looks almost like if you were going to be playing like a Monopoly game with real type money. That's kind of what it looks and feels like sometimes. So yeah. I see where your friend's coming from, but who knows? But yeah, I've noticed that a little bit too. I know I could feel it in my hand, just the feel of it, because I handled it so much. If I grab it, it just feels funny. Like it makes you go like you're doing stuff in the bank, and you're like, what? Because you could feel something different. So
yeah,
who knows?
Interesting. And I remember there was that ATM thing with Chase, like maybe about a year ago, where a bunch of people, like particularly in like kind of more low income, like ghetto areas of like New York and things like that, where people were. They figured out some kind of hack with the Chase ATMs where it was just spitting out money, and people were getting like tens of thousands of dollars from these ATMs. And then they ended up catching them, and people ended up having like a negative $40,000 bank account, and like people got in trouble for it. But it was some kind of exploit that people figured out, and then it was going viral online, and people were just lining up at these Chase ATMs trying to get free money.
Yeah. I haven't heard that, but I'm happy if they did that. And sometimes it's nice. Everyone needs to score every once in a while.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think they got hit afterwards. I don't know if anyone got away with some actual money from it, or if it just.
Well, yeah. God forbid the banks that the CEOs make, $40 million bonus checks, that someone who lives in a bad area get a couple of thousand in their pocket. God forbid.
Yeah. Right. I see. Lori said here in the chat, the most recent one, my local credit union has been very stable during this weirdness of our money switch over, which I'm glad to hear, because the credit unions are the ones that I've noticed are most inaccessible with being able to spend your money on crypto. Like when I'm working with people, it's usually when people have a credit union that they're getting blocked from crypto transactions. Whereas the big banks used to be more sketchy. Like I remember Chase a couple years ago was not doing crypto purchases, but now pretty much every big bank will allow it, but the credit unions are blocking it. So I'm curious, Corey, have you been able to buy it with your credit union? Toilet paper.
I said with the hundreds, like toilet paper. So she's gonna try it. She said, "Yeah, just put 100,000 on there. You go use it." That's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah, you know what though? But I also heard Lori, and with credit unions, and then they said with banks that are like regional banks, no more than 3 states. From the same guy who said about the slabs of money that blah blah. He said that he heard credit unions. And those regional banks that are 3 states and less, as far as their footprint, are going to be a lot safer than the big banks with all the convenience. So like the big three, and then your bigger banks outside the country that, are kind of all over. Those are the ones that are the most at risk. And those are the ones, by the way, the reason why they have slabs of money and they just need to flip the switch and it's taken so long. It's because the big banks still have some power, and they are fighting tooth and nail not to do that ISO compliancy with that Basel III. And they were supposed to do this. This was supposed to be done in 2024 at the absolute expiration date. And it's still going on now with the big three, especially. So it's ready to flip. The systems are primed, but they're still. This is what they're saying, is that they're just fighting tooth and nail. And listen, if they, from what he said, his contact is saying is that, the movement illegally of small people around for bad reasons, and then arms trading or stuff like that. Those are all black accounts through those bigger those banks, and they flip that switch on the ISO. There's gonna be a bloodbath, and people getting, you know what I mean. So maybe that's why they're trying to do what they can do to move out of it, or hold out as long as they can, to maybe keep, get some of their money in trusts or hidden so their family don't take a big hit. Who knows? I don't. Who knows? But that's just what they. That's kind of what they're. What I'm being told with that. So, but if with all the thing, with the kind of the facts that I read off on, the things that have been going on with the dollar, they're saying, they would think of by 2030, and if we hit one of these events, that the dollar can go away. This is what they're thinking. I'm on the same page. I think the fiat may go away, but I think we'll still have the dollar. But if there is an event like another 2008 or worse, right? If we have another recession, or if something happens, God forbid, with in the wrong way with the war or whatever it may be, it could kind of accelerate that, and something can happen sooner where the fiat dollar is kind of going to disappear. What I'm hoping is that there's just a more seamless transition, because ultimately I think America is resilient, and I think we are strong enough, and I think we have the leader in place for whatever faults someone may think he has. It's not about liking him or not liking him. I think he's the right leader for now, because you need somebody with a thick skin like that, who is putting America first and is going to fight for the country and not fight to get another $5 in his own pocket. So I think that's a good thing. But the only thing that I would like it to be more seamless when it flips, only because, again, the elites, they're not going to feel it. Like they didn't feel really the recession in 2008. It was people like us who felt it. And it's the people that are in the chat who felt it. And it's most of the 95% of the people in the middle of the country that really are the heart and soul of the country. Main Street is who takes the hit, not Wall Street. What they do is they just take a break, and they go to their house in the Bahamas and chill out for a while, right? Where we're all scrambling to try and do what we need to do. So, I hope it's seamless for that, because I just don't want to, I hate seeing the bulk of the good people that really made America what it is, really continually taking the hit. So I hope it's the right way, this is this guy here was Yick Boone.
He's in Conscious Crypto. He goes
awesome.
Tender Green Heart in our group chat.
Well,
he's from Malaysia.
Brother. Awesome. But he said he heard the reason why the ISO was delayed to July was because some institutions require more time to implement things. Okay, so wow, so he's here. That's out in Malaysia. So when you start to hear that there is some things, that's okay. Well, that's good.
He's pretty in depth with his research too. He's always providing good context and updates on research on what he's hearing in our group. So he's
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. It's good to hear, how outside the country, what they're seeing or what they're hearing, what they're thinking. But yeah, that's true. He's a businessman, not a politician. Yeah, which is why he probably puts his foot in his mouth so much. But that's what I love him. I like real people. He says things that most of us think and won't, and and most politicians probably think but won't say because they're worried about getting their next contribution. Where he just says it, so it's
Yeah.
pretty wild. What is he? Let's see. Get these last few here. Oh, thanks.
Nancy
He's a good dude. Yeah, I like this. I like him.
Yeah.
Ask Nancy Pelosi how to make money in the market. She knows all the tricks. She knows all the tricks. Yeah, the first time they made a lot of money, or not the first time, but the time that they politicized to show what they were doing is with Visa. Did you see that? They lifted regulation. She was very instrumental on lifting some regulation to kind of set Visa on a way to kind of blow by the other credit card companies. And then her husband happened to, which he just happens to be a savvy investor. He didn't know any of this. He invested a ton of options. He wound up buying a ton of options in Visa, and from you make what does she make, 150,000 a year? It's not bad, but you don't become a person with a net worth of like 100 million from that.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that's not how.
In Nvidia too, I think they did a sketchy trades very similar where they did some kind of regulatory thing and bought Nvidia right before, and then it shot up.
Yeah, and what you can see, and you know what? There's actually a web page that you can actually you can put it in, and it shows you everyone what they're investing in, and it's wild. And then when they asked directly to her, "Do you think that this should be legal?" and she was like, "Yeah." And why are you even asking me this question? Like, yes, I think it's fine. Don't ask me any more questions. This is how this is the corruption I'm in, and I don't want any questions on it. So be quiet. I mean, it's just I mean, that's a blatant. They just don't give a shit. It's wild. Excuse my language.
And then on the flip side, there is some gray area. Like I could see them, the political left accusing like the Trump family of maybe doing similar with cryptos. And that's where it gets kind of tricky. Cause like, when is it insider trading? When is it not? Obviously with Nancy, that was like super blatant and super obvious, but now it's kind of like, there's situations where it's gray area where maybe it could be classified as that, but it's also not the same. And I don't know. I think regulations and how insider trading is defined is going to have to be refined.
I just think, when it comes to, so do I think the optics are bad? Yes. So I think that's definitely not, the optics aren't great, but when you look at really insider trading, it's a little, or even with the crypto. So if there was an existing coin that was down, whatever, say it was XLM, right? And what Trump did was he started to lift regulation to make specifically XLM move, but right before he did that, he had Melania buy a shit ton of it. That's like more insider trading, right? Because nobody else has this information. It's information that's supposed to be private, and then you let it out, and then you act on it. It's the same thing with front running. If he realizes that his friends who are all billionaires are going to buy ABCD crypto coin, right, and they're going to buy it, and then he tells Don Jr., and Don Jr. goes and buys it right before that big wave, and he gets pushed up, that's front running. That's illegal as well. So stuff like that's a little different. But because of the optics are bad, they're going to run with that a little bit. But what Nancy, what she did with her husband, that is straight up. And now, and Martha Stewart went to jail for doing a little. It's a little like a drop of piss in a bucket compared to what they made, what the closing. I mean, it's wild. And people went to jail for that. I mean, it's insane. But yeah, for some reason, I think that if you look at it, Trump may be one of the most, whatever you think of him, just looking at the facts, they investigated him for how long now? If he jaywalked, he would have had a problem. That guy must have done everything right, as far as getting his taxes, everything done by the law and done exactly right. Because I mean, they got, that Paul Manafort guy, for 10 years ago, he did tax evasion, and they were investigating Trump. So the amount of scrutiny on this guy that he went through, and they couldn't get anything on him except some bullshit about Stormy Daniels and if he did or didn't do, pay. I mean, who gives a shit about that? You know what I mean? But it's pretty wild that, I mean, I figured, oh man, they got to come up with something. I mean, they're going back this far. He's a businessman. He probably tried to like finagle this or that, but they didn't find anything.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah. You can't play around with the FBI, man. They have everything.
That's where I wonder, like with, like what we were just talking about with crypto and potential insider, just playing devil's advocate here, because of course I love and support Trump, but like what they like with World Liberty Financial. Okay, so before they announced this recent crypto strategic reserve, they had World Liberty Financial, and they made strategic investments, and I guess you could say they were all just the top cryptos. And so maybe that's why it's not insider trading, but I could see the other side coming after them for that. But I wonder the technicalities of it and how it would play out. I just wonder where the line is actually drawn legally. Because I could picture them being like, oh, you guys bought these cryptos before you announced they were going to be in a strategic reserve, and then trying to go after them for that. But I don't know. Do you know where that line would be in that scenario?
I'm not with crypto. I'm applying how it is with stocks.
Yeah.
So with crypto, it may be different because just because of how long stock's been around and how long it's been, they've been able to do regulation and then revisions and regulation revisions. So this may be a little bit different. But as far as what they did, I think again it's bad optics, and it's kind of ballsy to do. When you're the president, I think I'm like, why even do it now? But as far as the legality, I don't know. I wouldn't think it's illegal, but definitely the optics suck, and it's something where they could definitely file motions to find out and slow shit up and have obstacles, just like they did with the Russia thing. Just any little thing that they can take. Yeah, I think it's something that they can take and snowball a little bit. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but it'll definitely be a hindrance to them or an obstacle or a distraction, which we don't need. Really quick, Lisa is she texting with somebody. So what would you say for them to look into as far as what the Crypto Academy is preaching?
Yeah. So I would say XRP, of course, number one, XLM, number two, in terms of, popularity as well. And then some smaller ones, I would say SHX, which is Stronghold, and then Corium. Those would be the top four. So XRP and XLM are obviously two of the more popular ones. SHX and Corium are not as popular, but it's good diversity in terms of, investing in some of the larger ones and then investing in some of the smaller ones that are going to come up or hopefully come up.
Thanks, Jayse. All right. So I appreciate everyone out there. We've been ran a little over an hour, guys. I'm sorry we got into Lori. Thanks for that comment. It sparked a whole firestorm of conversation. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate it, Lori. Thank you. And is it Yik? Is that how you pronounce his name? Yik?
I think so. Yeah. Yik Boontan.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here. And he's from, what'd you say? Where's he from? Malaysia. So big shout out to Malaysia. Thank you for being here. And just real quick, so a few things I know in the banner. You can read. You can book a strategy call with Jayse. It's the Conscious Crypto Academy, and what I'll tell you is you get bite-sized videos of everything from opening a wallet, getting it set up. Everything from getting set up to what he's actually putting his money into and how he's setting himself up. Passive income strategies that can offer 25% compounded a year. He's also getting into some meme coins. He's finally got into the meme coin, the meme coin. So, but he's looking into that, and anything he says, he's doing it. So he's not telling you to do something that he doesn't do. And then he has on Sundays, he has him, and also he has some really great coaches around him that he has in his academy that they have calls, and and once you're in for life. It's like the mafia. And so, but no, once you're in for life. So it's like it's a family that you'll be able to always have someone to bounce off of. So it's great having a coach like that. I appreciate him a lot. And so it's a great academy to move into. And then also really quick, Lisa, you see her in the chat there. She has a meditation program. You can go to visionsbeyondthedesert.com, and she has sessions for an hour, for a half hour, and then some meditations. And then we have, and then I have my book. If you are meditating and you want to manifest, we've been using the Grabavoy codes, and they've been working pretty good. And got some good feedback on it. And so it's the Frequency Formula is the book, and you can see it on Amazon and stuff. So, Jayse, do you have anything in closing?
No, I think that's it. I think you covered it. As far as links, I'm checking the description right now. I don't think it's been updated yet, so the link isn't there yet. But if you guys check either one of the last live stream, or I think
on Rumble and YouTube, your link should be there.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at YouTube now, but I don't see it in the description.
I'll double check. The link should be there. If they aren't there, then we'll check and we'll put them in.
Okay, sweet.
But yeah, all the links will be there for you.
So,
check
everything out. The book, check out Lisa's website, check out the academy, and we're all here for help and support. If you guys have questions, on the next video, bring your questions and we'll answer them on stream.
Okay, so yeah, it was on Rumble. So we'll update it. It's on Rumble, not YouTube. But yeah, so everybody, just want to let you know that I really, in the beginning, I had no idea about crypto. I really didn't, and his academy was really something that propelled me forward. So I look forward to having you guys in there and seeing you as part of that family as well. And I appreciate everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Next week it'll be the John drop, and you'll watch me play a little pickleball on that one. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. I love you.
See you guys.